Welcome to the All Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Steve Inman. We are back. I'm joined by a co-host and producer to the stars, Chris Brito. It's the trade we've been waiting all summer for. It's finally done. Dame Dalla is shockingly going to the Milwaukee Bucks. We're also going to discuss if the Knicks should make a big move and trade a bunch of assets for now on the move, Jrue Holiday. Before we get to all that, Chris, very action-packed show we got. How are you?
Hey, Stevie. Happy to be here on the All Hoops podcast. I think we were consistently looking at our phones, trying to see what happened. And I think for the longest time, this whole summer, we kept wondering, is it even going to happen?
Yeah.
And yesterday, in the middle of the day, unsuspectingly, we got the text. Well, we got the tweet rather from Moj saying that he's finally traded. And it went to a team that we didn't expect, a team that swooped in from what it sounds like, and grabbed Dame from like the claws from the Heat,
Yeah. The clutches.
And I don't know, man. I was really shocked, but then it made sense to me as we learned more of the deal. It just seemed like it solved two problems for the Bucks. It solved Giannis wanting to leave and now getting one of the players that he would have liked to play with, and Dame, who previously only expressed interest in the Heat, also playing with the player he's always wanted to play with in Giannis. So to me, this is a perfect combination. Two guys who are very low key and about their work. I think this is a perfect pairing. I think the pick and roll between both of them is going to be explosive. And to me, this is the team to beat in the East.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we both agree this is the team to beat in the East. I think, as Knicks fans, we keep trying to calm each other down about, hey, Giannis isn't really coming here. Stop listening to the noise. He's not coming here. But, you can't let it go completely. It's like you're 90% sure things are going to stay the same. You're not going to get that transcendent superstar. But I think with Lillard now in Milwaukee, that door is officially shut. He's not coming here. He's staying in Milwaukee. Whether he signs the new extension this summer or next summer, he's staying there for the indefinite future. I think it's a great trade for the Bucks. It's a win now trade, and yes, now they don't have any more draft picks for the rest of the decade. But at the same time, they didn't really have a ton of assets to begin with anyway. I think if you told me they could upgrade at point guard, upgrade their offense that has been very stagnant the last few years in the playoffs, to arguably one of the better scorers of all time, who's still probably close to his prime, I would think you do it 100 times out of 100. What I don't get, Chris, is the Suns aspect of this, because it's a 3-team trade, but it's really not a 3-team trade. Where basically it's really two separate trades. It's the Ayton to the Blazers trade, and it's the Lillard to the Bucks trade, because the Bucks aren't really sending out anyone to Phoenix other than it's Grayson Allen. So I just don't really understand, Chris, the thought process of dumping Ayton when he didn't really get along with the coach. He already got rid of the coach. He didn't really get along with Chris Paul. He got rid of Chris Paul. So like, it's felt like it could be a fresh start for Ayton. He had a brand new coach, and they trade him for a similar player in Nurkic, who's not a defensive stalwart, who's never shown he could be healthy, and a couple of role guys in Grayson Allen, who I don't love, and Nas Little, who, as a Carolina fan,
Just
he
gonna say
really has
that.
underachieved the last
Yeah.
few years as an NBA player. That doesn't mean either of those guys can't be a solid 7th, 8th man on a championship team, but I really felt like they dropped the ball here when the offer sheet came in a year ago for Ayton, and they didn't really want to pay a center $32 million a year or whatever it was. They had the opportunity to just flip him for Miles Turner.
Yeah.
The Pacers made that offer sheet, so they were clearly ready to make that change at center. And if you told me right now, hey, they have Miles Turner here instead of Nurkic or Ayton, I would probably say they're the favorites out west. And instead, they have 3 alpha scorers and not much else. And that doesn't, I think they're still contenders, but I don't really see how they're going to stop anybody defensively.
Uh it's not a great feeling to think if I mean, listen, the Suns' best hope is to outscore every single team every night
Yeah,
because their best player, their best defensive player probably is Kevin Durant. And
right.
can you trust him to be healthy?
Can you trust him to play center?
I mean, I don't know if he's going to play center, but this team needs to add a little bit more size. Like,
Right.
who's going to guard Nikola Jokic in the Western Conference Finals? Who's going to guard Anthony Davis?
His old teammate Nurkic, it looks like. I mean, Nurkic's never been healthy, and I think
Yeah, him
their
too.
thought process, the whispers you hear about Ayton was they just did not believe they can count on him. They didn't believe he liked his role. And I don't really see how that's different with Nurkic. You really just traded a guy in Ayton who, wherever you think about him, he was still playing most days. He was still out there. He was still a big bruiser who I thought could get better as a former number one overall pick. Whereas Nurkic, I think his best days are behind him. He hasn't played really healthy in many years. Defensively, he's been just nothing. And he's played good defense years ago.
Yeah.
So the Suns are banking on, well, he wasn't really trying. He wasn't really trying on that end of the floor because the team was just not in a race. But we'll see.
Is Ayton really a bruiser though? I think the problem a lot of the other Suns players had is that he didn't have like the intensity that
Yeah. Nurkic will bring that
I'm,
more.
I'm
Nurkic will bring that more.
okay. So here's my take. I don't think you were wrong about Nurkic either. I just think that maybe the Suns didn't need to get involved in this trade at all.
No, I don't get it. And people, what I was
That's
trying to say
that's
with
my
the
biggest
Bucks,
take.
with the Blazers aspect is people are like Jrue Holiday a first and Ayton. That's not bad. That's not really what they got for Lillard. They got Jrue a first and two pick swaps. Ayton really is, yes, they're in the same deal, but it's really a separate deal.
Hmm.
So, like, did they get enough? Take Ayton out for a second. Did the Blazers get enough for their best player ever?
I think they did.
Okay.
Mostly because I think the haul for Holiday for desperate contending
Yeah.
teams is probably going to fetch them a good or better package, which
Right.
makes no sense to me, but it kind of is what it is.
I mean, this Lillard was just such a tough fit in a lot of places. And I think you and I both agree that Lillard's a better player than Jrue Holiday. Lillard's a guy who brings a higher ceiling on your team than Jrue Holiday. But at the same time, Lillard's a smaller guard. He doesn't really defend. You can't really put him in a backcourt with another smaller guard, which a lot of teams have. Whereas Jrue Holiday is plug and play. Pretty much every team could get an upgrade with Jrue Holiday. Whereas Lillard, like, how does Lillard work against, like, next to Brunson? How would he work next to Tyrese Maxey? Um, it's it doesn't mean you don't want him, but it means it's a much tougher fit to fit that guy into your offense. Whereas Jrue really is just such a great fit everywhere. And I think you're right. I think it's going to be a bidding frenzy. I think they're going to get multiple first round picks and a young player for Jrue. And if that's the case, you got two first round, you got a first round pick, a pick swap, two pick swaps, and now you're adding two more first round picks and a young player, three picks, two pick swaps, and a young player for the Lillard Hall. That's a pretty good deal for them.
Yeah, and to some degree, I think the Bucks also didn't need to make this trade because if they won a championship,
Yeah.
this team as constructed,
Yeah.
who's to say that Giannis leaves, you know? But I also don't necessarily think the trade was awful for them either.
You
But they
wait, you
sort of,
think so? You think if they win a championship with this team now, he still could leave?
I don't think he leaves now.
Right. I don't either. I think this
But
locked him into
but I
Milwaukee.
don't but I sort of thought that I guess I just don't see the difference between having Jrue and Dame just because like from a like an objective point of view, because Dame is still an older player,
Yeah.
and it doesn't necessarily mean that Giannis will be like not happy in 2 seasons from now, you know? when maybe Dame hits a decline.
Right. But the idea here is Giannis is starting to put a little pressure on the team the way LeBron used to put pressure on the team. Hey, like, I want to be here as long as we're trying to compete. We're doing everything in our power to do that. Right. He's got 2 years left on his deal. So if Lillard and Giannis can go to a finals in the next year or so, I think that takes the pressure off the Bucks, whereas he signs one more extension. And right now he's only 28. His prime years are still ahead. And so if you can get him to sign that deal, that's a huge part of this trade as well.
Yeah.
You can get Giannis here until 28, 29, 2030. Like, that is crucial for this team. That's almost worth a couple picks in itself.
That's
So
true.
I think,
Just
I
can't
think it's an outstanding deal.
you just can't really improve this team any further.
No, you cannot. But I also don't think they could have improved this team any further as it was constructed without
Yeah.
trading one of Middleton or Jrue. And Middleton just signed a giant deal, so it's not going to be him. It had to be Jrue. And hypothetically, if you're the Bucks and you have a 33-year-old Jrue Holiday and he's ready to get his big deal, and Giannis in a year goes, we didn't make it further in the playoffs this year. I'm not really happy with these things. I want to be traded. You're going to have Middleton and Jrue Holiday making giant money and not much else and no draft picks either way. So I think the ceiling of this team just went up a notch, and I think they literally could win the championship. They could legit win this championship. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, now all eyes are on Jrue Holiday and the Blazers and what they're going to do here. It seems like they're going to try to make a move sooner rather than later to not have some awkwardness in training camp, which is coming around the corner. Chris, we talked about how Jrue Holiday fits every team. Every team includes the New York Knicks. Should the Knicks pull the trigger on a Jrue Holiday trade?
So I vote yes, because I think he fits in sort of like a glove with this team and sort of like fits all the philosophies and fundamentals that Thibodeau has sort of preached on this team. Is it a perfect fit? I think in many ways, yes. The one caveat would be that we'd probably have to let go of Quickly or Grimes. It's probably going to be Grimes. And the other one being that he sort of doesn't fit the timeline that the rest of the team is on. And I think that's sort of an issue, right? Like, I think one of the great things that this team is building is sort of like this flexibility and depth and youth.
Yeah.
And you start lose some of that with Jrue. And I'm not sure Jrue is necessarily the guy who's going to put us over the top.
No, I agree. I mean, I think Jrue makes this team a lot better. I think we both agree with that. Whether they trade Quickly, whether they trade Grimes with the picks, that's not really the issue. The issue is more the timetable aspect that you correctly brought up, because you can make the case Jrue had his best season last year, but it was year 14. Is year 15 going to be great? Probably. Is year 16, 17, 18, 19 going to be great when you're probably going to give him a 4-year extension? I don't know. And all of a sudden, that timetable, he's already 33 years old, Chris. And so you'd be trading multiple first round picks and likely one of Quickly or Grimes plus Hartenstein to make the money work, and, Fournier and a couple of smaller salaries. But it's a really tough decision. And, people kind of speculated, oh, maybe you get less picks, you just trade RJ Barrett. I don't want to do that either, because RJ is whether you think he's the future or not, he's still a guy in his early 20s.
I do think
Still
he's
has a
the
lot of
future,
room
by
to
the way.
grow. Yes, so do I. So I get a little nervous saying it, but Jrue is a fantastic player. He's a guy who's been underrated for a long time, but I'm not really convinced that the Knicks' big move should be trading multiple first round picks, young players, and giving a guy about to enter his mid 30s a giant deal. So I think this makes a lot more sense for a guy like, pairing him with Jimmy Butler in Miami. Those are guys are in their, around the same age. I think that would fit a lot. I think,
Do you think,
even if you want to put him in Philly, I think that makes sense.
but do you think the Bucks, sorry, not the Bucks, but do you think the Heat are going to want to be involved in any trade talks with the Blazers after what happened?
I think it would be very stubborn of them to not be willing to make offers and talks. I don't really know what those trades would look like, but at the same time, there's gonna be
It's
so
not
much.
because
Go
it's
ahead.
not really the Miami Heat's fault necessarily that the Blazers didn't accept their offer.
No, I think it is their fault because it's from every. I mean, obviously, we don't have all the details, right? This trade only came out Thursday, but at the same time, it sounds like from everybody involved that the Heat did not make their best offer, their A+ offer that they had. It sounds like they did what the Knicks did, which was they'll come back to us because they know their star wants to be here. And instead, the team, the small market team said, we're losing our star. I don't really care what he wants. We're going to take the best deal for us. And maybe that caused some bad blood, but at the same time, the Miami Heat offer for Jrue Holiday could very well be the best offer on the table. They could offer multiple first round picks. They could offer, a couple of young players. So I don't think it should get in the way, but stranger things have happened.
One final thing before we get to the break, Stevie. Where do you think Jrue is gonna actually end up? And then
Yeah.
two, what do you make of the report that talked about how um Dame apparently told Joe Cronin, the GM
Yeah.
or of the Blazers, that if he couldn't find a deal to Miami, that he would return back to the Blazers. And
I would,
he was at hold on. And
yeah.
apparently he was at some of the team workouts because he didn't think a trade was going to happen.
Right. I mean, I get it from both sides. I get it from Joe Cronin's point of view, and I get it from Dame's point of view, where basically he tried to force his way out. It didn't really work because he really is 2 years too late. Two years ago, the Blazers could ask for anything they want. They could probably put Dame on a great situation. But now Dame's making a lot more money. Dame's older. Dame is now on 2 more years of not finishing a full season. So it's really hard to get that A+ value and get him to the place he wants. It really seemed like it was more one or the other. So they picked getting the thing they wanted. And if I'm Joe Cronin and you have this all-time great guy who goes, if you can't get me where I want to go, I'm going to come back. I'd say too late. Scoot Henderson is the future there. They can't play together. They're similar guys, two undersized guys. The time for that was before the draft. If Dame said, I don't want to go anywhere, maybe that makes me consider trading down in the draft. I don't think I personally would. I think I would have just moved to the future. But at the same time, it's far too late now. Their two best players are two young guards. They cannot add an older guard and start this whole thing over and have the reports coming out of, well, Dame asked for a trade next year if they're not any good. They're not going to be any good. It's time to move on.
Hmm.
And
What
then, go ahead.
Drew?
Go ahead.
Drew.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think the Heat still have the most enticing offer. I do. I think they can offer multiple first round picks. They can put Kyle Lowry in it as not a sweetener because no one really wants his deal, but to make the money work. So it's a pretty flawless trade. It's just about, as you said, is there bad blood? Are they willing to put in those two first round picks? And is there a more desperate team out there? Like, I'd rather have two first round picks from Toronto, who needs a point guard desperately after losing Van Vliet, than the Heat. I'd rather have two first round picks from Philly than the Heat. So, like, do other teams get involved? I think they do. So it really could go any which way. I think he's going to end up a member of the Heat, though. I think Pat Riley's not going to get shut out on this.
I think it goes to Philly, but we'll see.
We will see. All right, Chris. Let's get to our final thoughts right after this. All right, Chris, final thoughts time here. Right before the break, we were just talking about how Philly should get involved in Jrue Holiday. Some kind of 3-team deal with Jrue going to Philly, James Harden maybe go to the Clippers. It makes a ton of sense. Just we'll see if that happens. But James Harden had a big party a couple days ago. You can see it on the video. And he had people holding up the Daryl Morey as a liar sign. I mean, I think he's gonna show up to camp, and I think he's gonna make things so difficult. And I'm very excited to see how it plays out.
I just want that whole James Harden chapter to like be over. I think listen, we're big fans of Dame, And even so, even with all the trade talk, we wanted that chapter to be over. But this one is probably the one on top of the list. Like I just don't want to talk about it anymore. It's like the Ben Simmons thing from last year.
Right.
A year or
That's
whenever.
exactly what it is. And it's the difference between the Ben Simmons thing and the Harden thing is this is worse because Ben Simmons at the time, people thought, oh, go to Indiana, go to Orlando, go to San Antonio, go rebuild your
Brand.
go rebuild your game, and maybe they get a franchise player. No one thinks that about James Harden at this point in his career. They think he's going to be difficult. They think he's going to be there's more drama ahead with the contract talk. And no one really believes he's a number one guy on a championship team at this stage of his career. So to me, it's just noise. And it's annoying noise because we don't really need it. I think Jrue Holiday is going to make a much bigger impact on a championship team next year than James Harden will.
Listen, I don't disagree with that. I think, but NBA teams find a way to move guys. I don't know how they do it. So, but they need to do that soon just because I can't.
I think there's, still a 50-50 chance he gets moved. I just don't think it's worth all the coverage it's getting.
Oh, for sure. But until then,
Chris, the season is less than a month away. NBA regular season games start October 24. I can't wait. Do you have anything else for us before we wrap up the show?
no, not a whole lot. I'm just really excited for the season to start. I'm going to a Knicks Clippers game at some point.
Let's go. Maybe you'll see Jrue Holiday at one of those
Yeah,
teams.
maybe. So I'm counting down the days for sure. I think preseason starts in mid-October or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's like early to mid-October. So
Okay. All right.
we will see. Basketball is about to be back. Very
Let's
exciting.
go. Yeah.
So that's going to do it for us here on the All Podcast. Chris, thank you as always. Thank you to our amazing watchers on YouTube, our listeners, with Apple and Spotify. We'll be back next week to talk some NBA action, maybe a Jrue Holiday trade, and then we got to get into some over-unders in the next few weeks as well.
Bye, everyone.